Before I give my speech, I want to say that I'm sharing my time with the Honourable Member for Richmond Arthabaska.
Let me say what a thrill it was to meet Kevin White's brother-in-law today, astronaut Jeremy Hansen, here on Parliament Hill. Kevin White, you ask, is the fire chief in the city of Barrie, and he's married to Jeremy's sister. So just thought I'd mention that for Kev's benefit. And, you know, during World War II, Mr. Speaker, when Allied aircraft would be flying over the targets ready to bomb, they would be hit with flak. And in this place, you know you're over the target when Liberals start justifying and making excuses for things that absolutely make no sense, and they actually speak in a louder tone to try to make their point. But what's important about this debate tonight is that Canadians are watching this government spend $200 million on a politically connected spaceport project in rural Nova Scotia, and the more we learn about it, the less sense that it actually makes. As the Finance Minister suggested at Committee of the Whole 2 weeks ago, this is not a story about innovation and not one about economic stewardship. It's a story, in fact, about Liberal insiders, political connections, well-connected insiders, and taxpayers who once again are being asked to foot the bill for a project and that should have never received this level of government backing in the first place. Canadians are effectively paying $50,000 every single day for this project. And what exactly are they getting for that money? A gravel road, 2 sea cans, and a concrete slab that has launched exactly 2 rockets. Neither of them have reached space. One of those launches was conducted by a York University student rocketry club. So Canadians are effectively paying $50,000 a day for what amounts to be the most expensive science fair project in the country. And yet somehow, despite this lack of infrastructure, the lack of revenue, the lack of launches, and the lack of any proven commercial success, the federal government decided to give this company, $20 million a year for the next 10 years. So the debate and the argument tonight is that Canadians deserve to know why the numbers alone make absolutely no sense. Maritime Launch Services reported less than $15,000 in annual revenue, and at the same time, the company reported tens of millions of dollars in losses and had only about $70,000 in cash on hand. Independent auditors openly warned that there was material uncertainty about whether the company could even continue operating. In plain English, this company was on the verge of financial collapse, and instead of walking away, what the Liberal government did was attached itself to this project even more aggressively. Canadians have seen this pattern before. When ordinary Canadians struggle financially, the Liberals tell them to budget better. But when politically connected companies struggle financially, the Liberals suddenly open up their wallets. The insider connections surrounding this project are impossible to ignore. Former Liberal Premier Stephen McNeil publicly supported the project before the environmental review had even been completed. Then later, after championing the project politically, he conveniently joined the company's advisory board. Canadians are tired of this revolving door where Liberal politicians help projects while in office, then later up somehow attached to the same companies benefiting from that government support. MLS reportedly lobbied the Justice Minister 14 separate times. The company's chief lobbyist was reportedly a former senior staffer to the Justice Minister, more than the current or former local MP for the area. Now, Canadians don't need a conspiracy theory to see what's happening here. The pattern is clear. Former Liberal politicians, former Liberal staffers, well-connected political insiders, all orbiting around a company that are now receiving hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer support. And despite all of these political connections, the project itself still makes no practical sense. The original business model was based around launching the Cyclone 4M rocket. The problem is that the rocket has never actually been built. So imagine spending $200 million to build an airport for planes that don't exist yet. Canadians would never, ever tolerate that level of incompetence in any other sector. And yet somehow this government saw no proven rocket, no proven market, no regulatory framework, no meaningful revenue, massive financial instability, and still thought, yes, this is exactly where $200 million of hard-earned taxpayer dollars should go. The government did not just ignore the warning signs, it practically sprinted past them. The company's founding partner became tied to a NASA false claims case involving allegations of false billing and ignored safety protocols. The chair of the board faced sanctions from Canada's investment regulator over failures involving compliance and supervision. The Ukrainian aerospace partner behind the project had already been surrounded by allegations of corruption, failed international projects, and major financial disputes. Any one of these should have triggered caution, but instead, Liberal insiders continued attaching themselves to this project. And the most unbelievable part of it all, Mr. Speaker, is that the land arrangement that's in place. Maritime Launch doesn't even own the land. They lease Crown land from the province of Nova Scotia for less than $13,000 a year. Then somehow, through this federal government agreement, taxpayers are massively paying inflated amounts connected to the exact same land, resulting in 1,300% profit margins being in place. Canadians are struggling. They can't get approved mortgages. Young people cannot afford homes. Families are cutting back on groceries. Seniors are struggling with bills. But somehow this Liberal government found a way to guarantee politically connected insiders with what appears to be a 1,300% return tied to publicly owned land. And that's not to mention, Mr. Speaker, that what were effectively worthless shares were sold for a profit of $1.8 million of what was effectively a bankrupt company. That's not economic development, nor is it innovation, as the finance minister would say. It's absolute cronyism. So why is the federal government attaching itself so aggressively to a project that still lacks even the most basic foundations for success? Well, Canada doesn't even have a fully developed regulatory framework for commercial orbital launches. The environmental assessment was minimal. The project dramatically changed its entire business model. The site itself is underdeveloped, and there were 2 launches, and both of them were unsuccessful. And still, the government wants to invest $200 million into it. At some point, Canadians stop seeing this as a business decision and will start seeing it for what it looks like: a politically protected project kept alive by well-connected Liberal insiders using taxpayer money. Canadians deserve governments that invest based on merit, viability, and public interest, not based on who knows which minister, which former premier, or which Liberal staffer, because right now, Canadians are paying $50,000 a day for a failed science project fare, while the only thing truly taking off appears to be the profits and connections of Liberal insiders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I often wonder if there's someone in the Conservative back room that kind of gives a gold star for every time someone mentions the word corruption on the other side. You know, the Conservatives consistently try to incorporate the word corruption in every speech that they give. And I guess my question to the member opposite is, does he believe that the Premier of Nova Scotia, who is, as I pointed out, a progressive Conservative, is wrong in supporting this project too?
The member for Barrie South, Innisfil.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the reason why corruption, cronyism, well-connected Liberal insiders, well-connected lobbyists come up all the time is because we see it happening all the time and them benefiting while Canadians are suffering at great cost over this Liberal government. And so this is why it's brought up all the time. The second part of his question is the support of this project. What Conservatives are looking for, and I think most Canadians would want, is some accountability, transparency over this project, because as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Speaker, There's a lot of questions that need to be raised here, and what we're trying to do is highlight some of those concerns to not just make Canadians more aware, but also to make sure that we're providing accountability and transparency on this project. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. L'honorable.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Bloc Québécois Whip. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague for his speech. I'm not sure if he was there earlier when I asked about businesses, but in the Bloc Québécois, we believe that our SMEs in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada require direct support. And this support must be quick and effective, otherwise we'll see closures. In recent weeks, we've seen furniture businesses close down. In Berthier-Maskinangé this morning, we did have some happy news. We were able to get a factory up and running after it was on the verge of bankruptcy. With different stakeholders working together, we were able to create favorable conditions. So I'd like to recognize that. I'd also like to recognize all the stakeholders of this important project. So we managed to save one business in a context where others are closing down, but we're concerned about the businesses that are closing down or that are experiencing difficulty. So does my colleague not believe that there should be wage subsidies to support rural businesses? The Honourable Member for Barrie South Innisfil. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would like to thank my colleague for that question. The same is true in my region. There are a number of businesses that are going through it due to tariffs, due to overburdensome regulations and laws following almost 11 years of this Liberal government. So I think we need to, what's the word?
In our ridings, there's no question about it. And you know, one of the ways that we can support business greatly is to ensure that many of those regulations, the legislation, the policies that are in place right now, the red tape that exists among business, and that is to get government out of the way and let these businesses flourish on their own. And of course, we should always be there to support businesses as well. But government creates the environment for success. It doesn't actually create that success from business.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires. The Honourable for Peace River Westlock.
Mr. Speaker, $200 million is what we're talking about with this launch pad. And I have in my riding a sawmill that's been recently shut down, 190 jobs lost there. $200 million would have gone a long ways there. Now, the member for High Park Parkdale and I were debating this earlier, and he talked about that we needed a Canadian Cape Canaveral. I'm just wondering if the honourable member could just do a little bit of comparison about this Maritime Launch Services and Cape Canaveral.
Honourable Member for Barrie South Innisfil in under 30 seconds.
Well, there's really not much to compare because you've got, as I said, a gravel road with a concrete pad compared to if you fly over Cape Canaveral or anybody that's been there. I mean, it's very well established. There's no question about it. But the issue here is the issue of transparency and accountability, and the fact that so much of taxpayer dollars were given to this company that was on the verge of bankruptcy. There's a lot more questions than answers we're getting right now. We need to keep pushing on this.